we spent a lot of time together up there because there wasn't anything else going on. And that's when I got to really,
Some memories feel like they never belonged to one person. They belonged to the world. Elvis Presley was more than a singer. He was a pulse, a fever, a promise that music could set people free. But for his daughter, Lisa Marie, that promise was something far more fragile. She saw the man behind the myth, the silence behind the songs. And years later she broke her silence, revealing what those final days really looked like from the inside. Here is the story of love, loss, and legacy, told by the only person who truly lived both sides of Elvis Presley's world, the daughter who saw too much. From the outside, Graceland was a kingdom. But inside, Lisa Marie saw the weight her father carried, the exhaustion behind the charm, the quiet behind the applause. She remembered his tenderness, but also the isolation fame brought. Her silence wasn't distance, it was protection. Until years later when she finally began to speak.
He had this habit of just putting me on a table in front of everybody and saying something.
Elvis Presley wasn't just a performer to her, he was a father who hummed lullabies, built snowmen in the Memphis winter, and told stories that always ended with laughter. But as she grew older, the laughter began to sound different, tired, careful, almost borrowed. The man everyone adored was slowly vanishing behind the image the world demanded. Lisa Marie once reflected that growing up with him was like living in two worlds, one drenched in spotlight, and one fading quietly behind the velvet curtains of Graceland. There were two Elvises, the one everyone else saw, and the one I got to love. Lisa Marie confessed years later, speaking not with regret, but with reverence for the man she knew best. The image of Elvis as the ultimate showman was everywhere, on posters, in movies, on television. But the version Lisa saw at home was softer, fragile, almost uncertain. She often described how he carried the weight of everyone's dreams on his shoulders, even when his own were quietly slipping away. That kind of pressure changes a person, and for a daughter who adored him, it was impossible not to feel the cracks forming beneath the perfection. What she remembered most wasn't the fame, it was the fatigue. The late-night phone calls, the strange visitors, the way her father's eyes seemed distant even in the middle of a crowd. She once said his presence could fill a room, yet his spirit often seemed elsewhere, searching for peace in a life that never allowed it. He was everything to me, the best dad, and the most haunted man I ever knew. Lisa Marie admitted softly in one interview, her voice steady but heavy with memory. When she finally broke her silence, her words weren't sensational or bitter. They were protective. They were love, translated into truth. Because for Lisa, Marie Presley, remembering her father wasn't about legend, it was about humanity. The house that never slept. Graceland was never still. The lights burned late, laughter echoed down the halls, and the phone rang through the night. Lisa, Marie recalled the endless visitors, the music sessions, the rhythm of a man who couldn't rest. To her, those nights weren't glamorous. They were restless, filled with a tension only she could feel. To most, Graceland was a dream, a mansion humming with music and movement. But for Lisa Marie, it was a stage that never went dark. The corridors were alive with bodyguards whispering, musicians tuning, and friends drifting in and out at all hours. She once described it as living inside a storm, beautiful from afar, exhausting up close. The air carried the smell of smoke and southern food. Every sound, every laugh, belonged to a man trying to outrun silence. Sleep wasn't part of our world, Lisa Marie once reflected in an interview. Dad was always awake, playing, talking, pacing. Graceland was alive because he couldn't turn it off. Even as a child, she could sense the weight behind the rhythm of those nights. Sometimes she would sneak from her room and find him at the piano, playing gospel songs under a single lamp. He wasn't performing. He was searching. The house seemed to breathe with him, each note echoing like a confession. There was no real quiet in Graceland, only music and motion, the kind that hides loneliness behind melody. Lisa Marie often said the house could shift moods in a heartbeat. Laughter might fill one room while exhaustion haunted another. She watched him push through dawn, charm still intact but spirit fading. He could make the world scream but couldn't find peace in his own home, she once admitted, her voice low and steady. I think the music kept him alive and kept him from resting. In those endless nights, Lisa Marie learned that fame doesn't shine, it hums. Behind the gates of Graceland, her father's brilliance never stopped burning, and neither did his restlessness. The decline nobody wanted to see. By the late 1970s, the myth of Elvis Presley was still strong, but his body was beginning to fail him. Lisa Marie remembered confusion more than fear, a father fading while the world kept cheering. The stage lights hid the truth, but at home, she saw what no one else could, a legend running out of time. The world saw energy and sparkle, but Lisa Marie saw exhaustion. Elvis was giving everything he had to stay on stage. Behind every grin was strain. He wanted to keep performing, to give his audience what they came for, even when his body begged him to stop. For Lisa Marie, those final years felt like watching her father fight a battle he couldn't win, against a crowd that never realized there was one. He was pushing himself too hard, she once reflected in an interview. Even as a kid, I could tell he was hurting, but he wouldn't show it. He didn't want to disappoint anyone. At Graceland, she would see him retreat to his room after shows, still wearing the jumpsuit, the collar open, his breath uneven. The pills were part of his routine. Now, painkillers for his body, sedatives for his mind. To the world they were rumors, to Lisa they were reality. He would call her late at night, his voice slow but loving, promising that they would travel soon, that things would be better. Those promises comforted her, but deep down, she knew he was fading. Elvis Presley's health was collapsing, but the machine around him never stopped. Tour schedules, contracts, press. Every person who loved him wanted to help, but no one could stop the momentum of the myth. Lisa Marie was too young to understand the full story, yet old enough to sense the tragedy unfolding in slow motion. I just remember feeling that something was changing, she later said, her voice quiet but sure. It wasn't fear, it was this deep, sad knowing that he was slipping away. In those final months, Graceland grew quieter, heavier. The man who once filled rooms with sound now moved like a shadow through his own home. Lisa Marie carried that image with her forever. Not the king on stage, but the father she couldn't save. The morning. The music stopped. The day everything changed began like any other. For Lisa Marie, it was just another morning at Graceland, until the world shifted. In the years since, she described that day not with drama, but with heartbreaking simplicity. Her words carried the kind of grief that never ends, only deepens with understanding. It was August. The house felt heavy, still. Lisa Marie remembered the quiet moments before chaos, the sound of footsteps in the hallway, whispers she didn't yet understand. Somewhere upstairs, something had gone terribly wrong. The man who had filled her world with music was suddenly unreachable. She didn't know it then, but that silence would follow her forever. I knew something was wrong, she later shared, her voice trembling in the memory. There was just this feeling in the air, like everything had stopped. In the hours that followed, the house became a blur of voices, flashing lights and tears. Doctors came and went. The phone rang endlessly. Outside, fans gathered without knowing the truth. Inside, Lisa Marie's world collapsed in slow motion. She watched the myth fall away, leaving behind the man she had only ever wanted to keep.
The world is shocked by Elvis Presley's sudden death after attempts to save his life failed.
Years later, she would talk about that morning with extraordinary calm. She didn't try to dramatize it. She didn't need to. Her restraint said more than any headline could. She wanted people to remember that behind the tragedy was love, pure, protective, unending. That morning was the moment when she learned how fragile even the brightest lives could be, and how memory could hurt as deeply as it could heal. "I lost him, but I never stopped feeling him around me," she said in one of her final interviews. "It's like he never really left. The music still plays." For Lisa Marie, that morning marked the end of her childhood and the beginning of a lifelong conversation with memory. The world lost Elvis Presley that day, but she lost her father, and that difference made all the sorrow in the world. The legacy she carried alone. After Elvis's death, Lisa Marie became the keeper of his world. Every song, every artifact, every fan who came to Graceland looked to her for connection. She spoke rarely, but when she did, her words were pure remembrance, a daughter trying to preserve her father's truth beyond the myth that consumed him.
Thank you.
She grew up under a shadow so vast it touched generations. The Presley name was no longer just a legacy, it was an inheritance of memory and expectation. Lisa Marie never asked for that burden, but she carried it with quiet strength. When people visited Graceland, they weren't just visiting a home, they were stepping into her story, into her father's world reborn through her. "Graceland isn't just a museum," Lisa Marie once said. "It's my father's heart, frozen in time. Every inch of it feels alive to me." For decades, she guarded that legacy with care, balancing reverence and reality. She understood that Elvis Presley wasn't only a cultural symbol, he was a man whose music gave hope to millions. In interviews, she avoided the sensational and spoke instead of kindness, laughter, and the quiet moments that defined him. Her goal wasn't to rewrite history, it was to remind the world that love, not fame, was his true legacy.
Lay down the law, don't make a sound, just critical.
Her own music became part of that conversation. Albums like To Whom It May Concern and Storm and Grace revealed her inner world, melancholy, resilience, and inherited honesty. Through them, she built her own identity while echoing the raw emotion her father once sang with. She didn't chase fame, she chased truth. Each lyric was a message from daughter to father across the years. "I'm not trying to live up to anything," she once reflected. "I'm just trying to keep him real, for me, and for the people who still love him." In the end, Lisa Marie carried more than a name, she carried a heartbeat. Through her voice, her music, and her stewardship of Graceland, she ensured Elvis's humanity would never fade. And though she bore that legacy alone, she turned it into something sacred, a bridge between memory and devotion. Grief and legacy often walk the same path. For Lisa Marie Presley, that path began in the echo of a song that never truly ended. She carried her father's name, his rhythm, his tenderness, and all the contradictions that came with them. Through decades of silence and strength, she became the quiet guardian of his truth. Her story reminds us that behind every legend is a family, behind every headline, a heartbeat. Lisa Marie didn't inherit fame, she inherited responsibility. And she bore it with grace, with honesty, with love that never dimmed. Elvis Presley built a dream the world still sings about. Lisa Marie kept that dream human, and in doing so, she gave it back its soul. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below and subscribe for more untold journeys behind the icons.